Hello once again. Welcome to Herd Immunity News. I'm Marcus Botza. Today, I am so happy to see back a dear friend of the show, Mr. David Vance, back on Herd Immunity News. David is a fantastic podcaster, political commentator, and a great patriot to the United Kingdom. He is someone who we always follow because he's up to date with what is going on in our country, over in America, and throughout the world. But without further ado, David, how are you, sir?
Yeah, all the better for seeing you, Marcus. It's great to be back here on Herd Immunity News. It's always something I look forward to because it's all about having great conversations, isn't it? I mean, I think that's what lies at the heart of a functioning democracy, let's say, which we don't have, of course. But if it was functioning, conversations like this would be at the core of it. So great to be here.
Great to have you back on. And let me just say here to everything that you just said. And more people are turning on to social media. And in the mainstream media's eyes, we're the devils. We're the speculators. We're the people that create all these problems. But let me just put a few little caveats out there before I go on any further, and please do add to them. We are going to be commenting on a live criminal case, but we're not going to be saying anything detrimental to the case, and we're going to be very, very careful about what we say, not making assumptions. We also, David and I, repudiate all violence. We believe in peaceful protest, freedom of speech, and the Magna Carta. The right for everyone in this country to have their say, but cause no harm against anyone else. We certainly don't want to incite any violence or hatred towards any group, any religion, any culture out there. David, would you like to add anything to that, sir?
Well, I would simply say that, as journalists, we are essentially always in pursuit of truth. And we want to do that with respect to the law, and which you've already outlined. And in no way there's any desire to prejudice a live, ongoing case. But by the same token, there's plenty of things that we can talk about.
Absolutely. And we can make commentary about how people are feeling out there, the mood of this nation as to so many things that have gone on. Well, we're 3 months to the day to those tragic events, well beyond tragic atrocities. Let's just use that word that we saw in Southport, as 3 little children were murdered, up to 10 people were injured. We have an ongoing case. Now, today, in light of the Southport tragedy, we've had a Crown Prosecution Service update. Today, the Crown Prosecution Service said that the Axel Radhakrishnan has been charged with production of biological toxin ricin. Contrary to the UK's Biological Weapons Act, he has also been charged with possessing an Al-Qaeda training manual in contravention of anti-terror law, and is due to appear in Westminster Magistrates Court on Wednesday. Now, this goes completely out the window to what we were told originally by Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, and Lord Chancellor Miss Shabana Mahmood. But the person at the front and centre of this must be Merseyside Police Chief Constable Serena Kennedy, who said on the day that they were not treating this as a terrorist incident, and urged the public not to speculate in any way whatsoever or spread misinformation. I mean, in light of all of the revelations that have come out today, what are your thoughts on this, David?
Okay, well, let's go back. Let's just for a second or a few minutes, let's go back to the killings in the first place, because Marcus, I remember it so well. It was one hell of a weekend. I had been at a function I'd put on a Friday night in London with Lawrence Fox and the guys from Voice of Wales and David Atherton, and we'd all been in a kind of a public gathering. Then the next day, Tommy Robinson had his big rally in Trafalgar Square. I was pleased to be at that. Then the next day, the Sunday, Tommy Robinson was then arrested, charged under the Anti-Terrorism Act. And there was protests outside Downing Street on the Sunday. And then on the Monday, the killings took place. So it was one wild ride. And, I remember the news coming in. And because I live in Northern Ireland, as you know, Marcus, and given the age that I am, I've lived through all kinds of terrorist atrocities, including ones involving family and friends. So I know that horrible feeling, horrible sinking feeling. So I watched on the Monday as the news started to emerge that there'd been an attack, and then we got the details. And as you say, we were told from the highest in the land that, look, we mustn't rush to judgment, and that it was a Cardiff man. Originally, they said a Cardiff man. Well, yeah, one of the Ruta Cubanas from the valleys, boy. Oh, yes, there's lots of Ruta Cubanas from the valleys. In fact, as we know, and as I remember saying at the time, this guy, the alleged killer's parents came from Rwanda in the mid-1990s. And there's a certain mystery about how did they get here. I think they came eventually under settled status. What were they doing in Rwanda? Because, as I'm sure you and your viewers will remember, there was a genocide going on then. Remember that awkwardness, the genocide? So anyway, they came here. And then we were gaslit into being told this guy, Christianity is the majority religious faith as such in Rwanda. So we were basically being told, look, he's a Cardiff guy. Okay, his family maybe come from Rwanda, but don't talk about that. And, he's Christian probably, and shut up because we can't say anything more. That's what, and the country went on fire. I mean, all the protests, and I don't necessarily agree that they were riots, Marcus. I think there were protests, and some of them became riotous. Absolutely. No, and nobody condones rioting. Again, as you said at the beginning, we're peaceful people. But there were protests based on the fact that the suggestion was that one of the suggestions was that the alleged killer was Muslim. That was, if you remember, people went to prison for saying that. That's the key point. People were in prison within a sort of 48-hour justice cycle, two-tier justice cycle. Some people for being very agitated about that central fact. I'm now saying, in the light of the information we've now had from the CPS, as you observe, are those are those safe any longer? Those sentences, because if you've been imprisoned, if you're now behind bars because you said, I'm sick of the Muslim terrorism. Well, it is suggested by the CPS. If you've downloaded the Al Qaeda operating manual, I'm sorry, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to work that one out. I'm suggesting that from the evidence anyway, from what they have said, not too many Christians download the Al Qaeda operating manual. So bringing it right forward. So there was that mood, Marcus, over the country, which I'm sure everyone remembers from August. It was horrible because the horrible killings, and then this horrible authoritarian regime lifting people, putting them right into prisons almost straight away. And we've seen the death of one of those in the form of Mr. Peter Lynch, who took his own life, but the other week, again, for hearty words, basically, for saying things which many people would agree with. And we've seen the Conservative councillor's wife, also been stuck behind bars for 2.5 years. But what if the central truth of the matter is that this was a jihad attack? If it is, I'm saying it's not unreasonable to suggest that those verdicts are now unsafe, and something needs to be done to get justice for those people who are behind bars for saying something that the CPS is now saying, yeah. Well, if he was downloading the Al Qaeda handbook, come on. Marcus, what was he? He was hardly, a Jehovah's Witness.
Well, everything you said is on the money, and at first, this character was painted as a Christian Welshman, as you said, Taffy Jones, or even Aled Jones. We're not suggesting Aled Jones is linked to this in any way whatsoever, But the narrative was Christian man, child, mental health issues, all the normal stuff. But just to go back on a little bit that you said, there may be a case for retrials in light of this exculpatory evidence that's been brought to bear with the disclosure that this man is indeed linked to Islamic fundamentalist terror group Al-Qaeda.
Exactly. And as we believe in the rule of law, and we want everyone to be treated fairly under the rule of law, I would suggest, and I've seen no less a figure than Toby Young of the Free Speech Union saying in the past couple of hours that there may be a case where some of these judgments could be deemed to be unsafe, or at least worthy of a very fast, judicial review. They were able to lock them up in 48 hours, Marcus. They should be able to conduct a review in another 48 hours, shouldn't they? But it goes further. Let me put it, I suggest this goes much deeper and much further, because people were imprisoned for spreading disinformation. Right? That was the whole thing. Remember disinformation. Yes. But I now look back in the headlines. This is where the internet is forever. And I believe that so many people, from the Prime Minister through the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, right the way down the political chain, including many in the media, they spread the misinformation that this Cardiff man was Christian and it was not Muslim related. But turns out that it seems to be there was, or at least that appears to be the case. So should we expect the quick arrest of, for example, Starmer? Let's take the Prime Minister just for 1 second. So I would suggest to you and people listening that within 24 hours of this, the terrible, terrible killings, the police would have raided the house, right? They would have found the ricin. Because apparently this is the thing. It wasn't just 3 girls that he wanted to kill, which was bad enough, totally horrific. But he was making this ricin poison with presumably intention of killing many more people, mass poisoning. So that would have been found, Marcus. I would have thought, within a day, So are we asked to believe that the police didn't really find it then? They've only found it last week? I don't think so. So the Prime Minister would have known all these things. So in the light of that knowledge, I put it to you, the question should be asked of the Prime Minister. What did you know and when did you know it? And the same with the Home Secretary. And I think we deserve answers to those. And those questions should be asked in Parliament, which is the proper place to ask those. And they should be asked tomorrow.
Absolutely. People are tired of seeing this, the weaponisation of the judiciary and our police force. And one wonders if this had been someone who was, say, in UKIP or Reform, how quickly they would have found that ricin, how quickly that person would have been totally exposed and all the details and facts out. But instead, we've had a vacuum for 3 months. You ask great questions. Who knew who he was? When did they know it? And what did they know? And why was it redacted? Now, there is a narrative that's put out there by Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Home Secretary Cooper, Lord Chancellor Rachel Mahmood, that anyone who questioned where this chap was from and what groups that he was linked to was inciting hatred and violence against asylum seekers. Let's put that there to one side. Now let's employ the law, which we're meant to do in this country, fair and balanced. Are those that diminished or lessened the terror threats, either directly or indirectly by covering up or whitewashing, guilty of endangering the people of this country? We'll put that to you, David.
Yeah, I mean, the answer to your question is quite clearly yes. And we do need to get answers. I mean, there are a lot of people, I think, tonight across the UK, and this is where it's like going back in time to the end of July. And a lot of people are kind of shocked at this because a lot of us basically know, well, this is what we were saying. We suspected this. Look, Marcus, you don't just randomly go out and slit the throat of young girls. You don't randomly do that. It doesn't happen, right? So it was obvious there was something there from the very beginning. But you're right. Starmer and the rest of them basically told us, look, shut up. That, you're not allowed to talk about that. And furthermore, if you do, we're going to put you in prison. And they did. And yes, this country almost went on fire, but it also allowed Stormer to. The jackboot came down, and people were very scared. And I understand that, because no one wants to go to prison. None of us do, of course. But the point is that now. And the timing, we need to talk about the timing of this. This information came out on, obviously, October 29th. The day after Tommy Robinson had been imprisoned on October 28th. Now, I put it to you, that's one hell of a coincidence, isn't it? The day, especially as this information, at least the first time I saw it, Marcus, it was broken by Guido Fawkes, Guido Fawkes. And Guido Fawkes says that they were going to break it last Friday, but they were prevailed upon to wait until today. So that the news was stifled for several days, during which Tommy Robinson was up in court, sentenced, and off to Belmarsh Prison, which is where he resides at the moment. And so again, I'm sorry, this whole thing, there's a stench of, what word you want to use? Corruption, manipulation. I'm not sure, but it's wrong. We British deserve better. This is something you'd expect in a banana republic. And is that what we have under Stormer?
Absolutely. People are talking about gulags being formed, this Operation Early Dawn, which has seen the release of thousands of dangerous criminals, some sex offenders, rapists, fraudsters, attempted murderers, released out onto the streets. So people like the late, God rest his soul, Peter Lynch, a peaceful man, a man with a clean criminal record. So people like him can be put in jail. And what we're being told, David, is he committed suicide. But there are many people reporting to say that these prisoners have been put in Muslim-dominated wings. There's reports that we can't confirm right now of them being attacked and assaulted. The police, many people are saying that there's almost like a Stasi, a political police force being formed in this country. And we'll come on to some of that evidence that we have. It's called two-tier policing, but there's far more sinister terms we can use than that. Is that fair?
Well, I mean, the whole two-tier care thing, it's stuck because, like, the best things that it's true. People see the double standard. People saw all those people being sent to prison back in August and in September, and they saw the gloating of not just the politicians but the police as well, including the Merseyside chief police officer, and we were all being sent the message: you're not safe anywhere if you dared to speak up. But I mean, how could we not speak up? And I think we've got a two-tier justice system, a two-tier policing system. It's been brought in, I think, Marcus, under Stormer, and it's been brought in so fast that it still shocks me. I'm still shocked by what I see. But the only thing is, I think that what we saw back in July and now in August, and what we see now, this new information that's come out, I think lots of people, lots of maybe more middle of the road people even, are going to say, this can't be right. But we were told he was a Christian from Cardiff. And now, well, he's a second-generation Rwandan and downloading Al-Qaeda operating manuals and trying to propagate the mass toxin ricin.
We've got a massive problem in this country when our own authorities, our secret services, our government are almost like lighthouse keepers that see ships going towards the rocks. If the tanker hits the rock, everyone dies, but they say nothing because they maybe know that the captain is a woman or transgender. There's an air traffic controller.
Yeah.
Sees two planes coming together in a head-on collision, but he knows both pilots are female and one's maybe from a protected characteristic, but he doesn't want to say anything.
Yeah.
And this is going on day after day after day. Let me just put something to you. Robert Jenrick, Conservative MP, and leadership candidate in the Conservative, the Uni-Party wing of the Conservative Party. Sorry about that. I know you're going to correct me.
Yeah.
Jenrick's going against Badenoch.
Yeah.
And he came out the other day on Talk TV friend of yours and mine, Mike Graham show, the great Mike Graham.
Yeah, Mike's a good
He came
guy.
out and said that there is a veil being pulled across the court systems when it comes to illegal migrants. We've got closed courts, we have injunctions, we have delisting on cases that involve people who have come here illegally. This isn't conspiracy theory, David. This is coming from a candidate to become leader of the Conservative Party. It's really like Pandora's box has opened up.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Jenrick, as you say, wannabe leader of the blue end of the Uni Party. I mean, even a stop clock is right twice a day, you know, and he is right to say that.
Yeah.
But what it does as well is it undermines our faith in the justice system. I mean, this is the other thing. I've always passionately cared about the rule of law, given where I live and given the background. I believe in the rule of law. I also understand the intricacies of the rule of law and of the court system and such issues as contempt of court and all that. I mean, I get all that kind of stuff. Sure. But at the end of the day, you know, a lot of people, I think, millions of people across this country saw those arrests under two-tier care back in August, September, and they were kind of sickened by it. You know, it didn't feel right. But that was then. Now we are at the end of October, and we're now getting information which fundamentally turns the whole thing on its head. And against the tapestry of Tommy Robinson being thrown in prison for the next 9 months. So isn't that ever so convenient? And it looks like the complete manipulation of the justice system. Now, who would be a good person to do that? Oh, let's see, someone who was a former director of public prosecutions. That would be a good background if you wanted to do stuff like that. We you know, these are serious times, and you know, the Starmer regime, I don't think it will last. It can't endure, not at this rate, because too many people are going to, you know, be very, very unhappy.
Absolutely, and this brings us on to the subject of Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson, a polarising figure for many in the right of politics. The man has been sentenced to 18 months in custody. He may well serve 9 months for good behaviour. His lawyers have directed that he will be placed in solitary confinement. He pleaded guilty to contempt of court. And this was basically on his disclosure of a documentary that he'd made. And there was a court ruling that said he could not publish this, and it would be a contempt of court. It links back to his mobile phone, and he was put in an insidious position that he could not give up his contacts on his phone or be seen to do that. But the police have the technology now, David, under the Terror Act, to actually access that phone. So they could have done if they wanted to, but they put him in an incredible situation. What's your overview of Tommy Robinson and his situation right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting one, Marcus. So I mean, my take on it is that they want to make an example of Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson is like you and me and everyone else. We all have feet of clay. None of us is perfect. Tommy isn't perfect, for sure. I mean, I followed the legal cases, the first one and then this one. And I mean, the fact of the matter is that Tommy really was put in a position, a catch-22 position. If anyone, I don't know if you've watched this Silence documentary.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, and I've watched it.
I recommend everybody watch it.
Everyone should watch it. Yeah, apparently Nick Lowles of Hope Not Hate might cry if you do that, so I doubly recommend that. But yeah, it's a very comprehensive documentary trying to prove a point. Sure. The issue is that it's to me, it's after the fact. I think the problem is that the first judge made a determination, which I've read and thought about. And I think Tommy maybe could have got better legal representation, possibly in the first case. But because of the first case, when it came to the second case, he was never going to win. It was impossible to win. I think that, you know, Tommy, to me, and having watched Silence, it all seems pretty credible. It's a very valid perspective from Tommy Robinson. But really, here's the question, you know, should a guy be sent to one of Her Majesty's prison, Belmarsh, which is where he is. It's like almost maximum security prison.
Sure.
I mean, what was his crime? He was in contempt of court order. That's what he was in contempt of. A court order which you could question around the edges, but that's the law. So the punishment seems remarkably severe to me, and I think it's also it feels politically convenient, and it's not something, Marcus, we shouldn't pass the fact that the particular justice concerned in this most recent case has a track record of, for example, representing MI6. I kid you not, representing MI6. He also was involved in the Julian Assange determination to send him to the US. So the particular judge seems to be incredibly well connected to the British establishment, which I'm sure is a complete coincidence and in no way invalidates his opinion. But I'll tell you what, it doesn't have to make you think that we live in a world of total coincidences, that this particular judge, very close to what the British establishment, which is not illegal, that's fine, but he is nonetheless a creature of that. And he was involved in the Julian Assange determination to send him to the States with a few provisors. And now he sent Tommy Robinson to Belmarsh. So people can work it out for themselves.
Well, absolutely right. Some people may call him very accommodating, David.
That's a good word.
And when the people that don't live in the United Kingdom look on the outside, and we put a post up that put a picture of Hugh Edwards up on one side and a picture of Tommy Robinson on the other. And they said the UK is a country that offers out non-custodial sentences to paedophiles, where journalists who cross the line against the establishment, who are looking into something that would crack open paedophilia, are imprisoned for 18 months. Just let that sink in. Anyone looking at the UK. And we're lectured endlessly, aren't we, about the ECHR. We need to be seen as a caring, loving country that's been built by migrants' hands. Well, we're putting paedophiles on £300,000 a year on taxpayers' pensions, Hugh Edwards, and we're locking up people who may have clumsily or inadvertently broken laws that could be punishable by non-custodial sentences, or at least a category D open prison, which many paedophiles are put and placed into. And that particular judge that you're referring to has a very interesting track record.
Yes, he has.
As you correctly point out, that raise eyebrows and raise questions. Very accommodating is maybe what we would say.
Well, also, if you look into the history, if you go back to August, and if you look at the justices involved then in the sort of 24-hour justice
fast tracking,
their history is also very, very interesting. I want to have absolute confidence in the justice and our judicial system. I want to have that. But I feel that the Prime Minister himself and Yvette Cooper have undermined that. And I'm not sure what pressure they can or cannot put, what understandings they may or may not have. But I reckon if you did a poll on people, and the British people, do you think after 4 months of Keir Starmer, do you feel more confidence or less confidence in the legal system? I'd be very interested in the result of that poll.
Well, absolutely. And there's questions now over the inaction of multiple cases that are ongoing. Now, we'll only speculate and give an overview to there are 2 suspects in a Manchester Manchester airport assault involving several police officers who have been badly beaten and hospitalised. There's an ongoing case, although it's not a case, of a Labour MP who has been named as Mike Amesbury, who beat 3 colours of crap out of someone who, on the face of it, did nothing. Even if he had said something to provoke him into response, that may have been justified. But the absolute beating of a man who maybe, as it turns out, was questioning the winter fuel allowance being cut on a bridge. He also commented about a bridge being closed down. Such a savage attack hasn't even been met with an arrest. Now, let's just turn it around quickly and I'll put it back to you. Imagine if this was Lee Anderson.
I'd be straight in prison. Straight in prison. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
He'd be in the next cell to Tommy.
Yeah, he would be. Oh yeah, Iron Mike Amesbury and his assault on I presume his constituent. It was quite shocking. But there again, I mean, these people, unfortunately, they know the law. I don't believe. I mean, you would think that he should be straight through the same 24-hour court system and straight to prison. He won't go to prison because whether he was, I'm not sure if he was inebriated or not, but what I do know is on several occasions during the video, he does say, I'm defending myself. I'm defending myself. You threaten. He says, you threatened me. You threatened me. And the reason he said that, Marcus, it's legal. Under our laws, yes, if you say, I have the right, essentially, if you confronted me and I thought you were likely to attack me, I do have the right to actually take a preemptive strike against you. So arguably, he could defend the first punch that he threw. But I don't see, we've seen the whole video. He then beat the guy when he was lying on the ground. I don't think there's any defence he can have about that. But he's a Labour politician. Well, he was a Labour politician, and but it shows you the contempt they have for us, you know, because it's the same thing. The same MP. If you look back in his Twitter history, he spent most of his time on Twitter calling for everyone else to resign. So I mean, okay, he said the whip taken off him. He should be thrown out of Parliament, and there should be a by-election in that constituency. We can't have thugs in Parliament, and this guy has proven himself seemingly to be a thug.
Absolutely. And he was actually heading up an antisocial behaviour task force on Labour's behalf. It reminds me of Keith Vaz. Remember?
Oh, yeah, Keith. Oh, yeah, Keith. I do. I remember.
Washing machine salesman.
Yeah.
Two rent boys over at his house, and he was getting quotes. And Keith Vaz was buying cocaine and using these Romanian red boys. And he was the head of the Labour Party vice group looking into salacious acts, exactly the things that he was engaging in. I mean, you have got a good point to say that Amesbury does have under the law a right to protect himself.
He does.
With reasonable force, David. I don't think there's a lawyer in the land that could defend him to say that 5 punches while a man is on the floor. And remember, the reasonable force is taken into the context. He could have made good his escape. There was nothing blocking him.
Also true.
No other parties involved. There may well be, now this is purely speculation, a good case to say that he is guilty of grievous bodily harm. But charges haven't even been brought to the man.
No, it's right. He made himself amenable to the local police, and they presumably took statements from him and let him go. Unlike the people that they got. But then you see, this comes down to a lot of the people that were arrested in the aftermath of the killings in Southport. They were just like ordinary people who have no experience of the police system. So when the police rocked up and said, look, we've got evidence of you doing this, that, and the other, they just pled guilty, at which point they were doomed. Once you plead guilty, I mean, it's just a matter of what the sentence is going to be. There's no rights or wrongs beyond that. The people who were perhaps better legally advised, Marcus, they did not plead guilty, which is what you should always do, unless you're guilty. And therefore, those people are not behind bars. And this sickens me as well. It's awful to think that, in a sense, the system took advantage of the naiveness, or innocence, maybe a better word, of these people. Those were genuine patriotic people out on the streets in early August. The overwhelming majority of them were. Yes, there was a small bad element, but it was a small bad element, and but most of it was just heightened emotion. And I put it to you: had the Prime Minister and Home Secretary been honest with us, all we want is honesty. If they had been honest from day one, and this whole thing didn't smell so bad from day one, then that would have gone some way to assuage the anger people felt. But it turns out that, we were stitched up all along. And it's only taken, as you said, 3 months for that now to spill out into the public realm. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens next. I was speaking to people earlier today, and they were suggesting one of the things that we could do, for example, you could have a peaceful assembly outside Westminster. You should surround Westminster by peaceful people, essentially demanding the full facts are now publicly made available to us. No more hiding, no more obfuscation, none of that. Let's find out exactly who knew what, when did they know it, and what they're going to do about it.
100%. 100% agree. Now, this brings us on to another hot topic that's going on in the right wing of politics. And this is the rift that's happened between, you got UKIP, you have right-wingers like ourselves, patriots, whatever you want to call us. But we're extreme radical right-wing in the eyes of the Guardian readers and the BBC.
Oh, that's because they're all communists. Yeah.
Well, that's right. They're all red ravens.
Yeah.
Now they've got this debate about mass deportations. Now, we've kind of probably egged this on a bit because there's no point now in just talking about accommodating people or trying to assimilate with people that might hate us or want us dead. We're talking about mass deportations. Now, this is a big rift that's come about between UKIP, an interview that we did with Nick Tenconi, I've had him on a couple of times, Ben Habib, who's probably, other than Nigel, the most well-respected politician from the Reform Party, although it doesn't look like he's in Reform. There's a big question mark around it. And Steve Edgington, the GB News interview with Reform leader Nigel Farage. On mass deportations, Mr. David Vance.
Yeah.
What are your views on UK mass deportations? Who should be deported? When should they be deported? And is it a good thing?
Yeah. One, as many as possible, and two, as quickly as possible. Everyone who came here illegally, out. We don't want you here. You shouldn't have. You broke our laws. If you are a criminal, if you break our laws in coming here, then by definition you have no right to be in this country. So I mean, this is where UK versus US politics sickens me. Donald Trump stands up and says, if he gets in, which I think he will be getting in, hopefully in a week or so's time, fingers crossed, mass deportations. Trump saying that. Why don't we have politicians with the courage to say the same? And it's because they're so mealy-mouthed and pathetic. And I do see this rift between UKIP and Reform. Absolutely, Mark, as I say it. Although Ben Habib is a sensible voice in this. And in actual fact, just as a heads up, as an FYI, at the end of January, just quick spoiler alert, I'll be doing a live show in London with Ben Habib. So people will provide details, but that'll be a whole evening where we can get to grips with all of this stuff, But I get frustrated by Nigel Farage and in particular Richard Tice, who I don't like. They equivocate. They all equivocate. And Nigel has said, for us, for example, that Reform's policy is that look, it's just not going to be possible to have mass deportation, so it's not happening. The best we can do is limit the numbers coming here till eventually get to net migration. So weak. I know UKIP is a much more robust policy. Some people will say, but hey, Marcus and David, you have to be realist. You got to understand the way politics really works. This mass deportation is just extreme, and it's not going to happen. So just accept that. My counter to that is, if we don't do it, public services are screwed. Our health, schools, you name it, right across the whole infrastructure with the numbers we have here across the UK. So listen, we either accept that our public services will crumble and our economy will be permanently crippled by it, which apparently is what Nigel Farage wants, or we man up and we sort of say, we just say, right, look, we know who these people are, out. Put them on the next boat to Calais. And beyond that, it's the French government's fault, because that's where most of them came from. They came through France to come here. So I would just have I would have the small boats going the other way. Maybe actually not boats. Maybe large ferries should be going across. We don't want them. They're destroying our country. Honestly,
we've got the Bibby Stockholm.
Yeah, send that across. Yeah,
you get 2,000 on, 2,000 a time. We did a quick calculation on the back of a fact packet the other day. Yeah, you'll like this. Not a lot, but you'll like it. God rest Jiminy Cricket. For you
Yeah.
young ones out there, Google them.
Yeah.
But with the Bibby Stockholm, you could put 2,000 on, do 2 trips a day, there and back. And at that rate, doing it every day of the year, you could transport 3 million back to France, off to Calais, obviously protected by the Royal Navy, with gunships, whatever we've got left, and our subs. And it would take you 2 years to get 3 million people out. Right away, we've got 39,000 people on the terror watch list, linked to Islamic fundamentalists. We've got 10,000 foreign criminals in jail, costing us 1.5 billion. And Ben Habib, who's going to be on your fantastic show, we will be there, sir. We will be getting tickets off you. You will have us on some little back.
You'd be very welcome.
Back alley list. We'll pay our way. We're not like Keir Starmer. We'll pay our way. We'll pay our tickets. We don't need Lord Ali. Anyway, this is a situation that Reform are in. Now, David, on the rift that we see right now between UKIP, Nick Tenconi on one side, and Nigel Farage and the Reform Party on the other side, it's over deportations. Where do you see this rift going for Mr. Tenconi and UKIP, and where do you see it going for Reform and Nigel Farage, and what is your view on the deportation situation?
It's so complex. I mean, obviously we should be having deportations. Actually, this country cannot survive unless we have them. And this is where I feel Nigel Farage is misguided. He's basically taking the line that, look, we just can't have them, and the best we can do is hope to get to net zero migration. That's Nigel's line, and that's Reform's line. And I understand that. That's realpolitik line. However, UKIP and Nick Tenconi are basically saying something which many of us actually want, and that's not good enough for us. We want to see everyone who broke the law and come into this country kicked out. I want them out. And I couldn't, I think a robust nation will do that. Donald Trump's going to do mass deportations in the States. Why can't the UK? And the real tragedy is that obviously the Conservatives won't do it. The Uni Party won't do it. We know that, but we don't care about them. I want to see space create an arrangement. It's such a cliche when you say it, but I would love to see Reform and UKIP and maybe a few of the tiny other parties kind of coming together with that clear understanding. But no, if you listen to Tice and Farage, they want to be ever so respectable, and respectable means no mass deportations. And that's causing a crisis, I think, within Reform, because a lot of rank and file Reform members are also quite happy with the notion of mass deportations, but they're not going to get it from the current leadership. I'm afraid the current leadership want to be in the club markets. That's the truth of the matter, and they won't do it. Absolutely, and Richard Tice, the deputy leader, is he's made another blunder, really, another Ratner's moment where he was on with Camilla Tomley on GB News, David. I don't know if you saw his interview. What a clanger. He said, this lot, nothing to do with us. Tommy Robinson and his lot. He's talking about maybe 50,000 patriotic British people, many of whom are veterans, many of whom are in Reform itself. And I think every single person there, but every one person that's there's maybe 100 people at home that would wished they could have been there, but they didn't have the money or the time. I mean, surely to goodness, Richard Tice cannot go on saying silly things like this. Well, that was, as you said, that was a Gerard Ratner moment for sure, because so many Reform people, I know them, who are, they're very big on Reform. And at the same time, they are very big on we need to start mass deportations. And actually, the other thing is they're also pro Tommy Robinson. Yeah. And again, on the same interview, this whole contempt for Tommy Robinson, which, by the way, Robert Jenrick also repeated. So I'm beginning to think, I'm looking at the Reform leadership and I'm looking at the Conservative leadership, and I'm reminded of that bit from George Orwell's Animal Farm, when the pigs look to the humans and the humans look to the pigs, and they can no longer tell the difference. And I'm beginning to feel that between the Tice Farage brand within Reform, and maybe other more sensible voices within Reform, and people like Nick Tenconi in UKIP. We need to have clear unity, and we're not going to have it if the best that Farage and Tice can do is be, slightly more blue conservatives. Doesn't interest me.
Yeah, I mean, the Conservatives are almost like a beached whale. They're there for the taking, and that the jackals and the hounds are all having a good old chew. Now, the majority of that rump will go and has gone to the Reform Party.
Well, it's gone to Reform. It hasn't gone to UKIP, and so this is the quandary. I mean, I like the stuff that Nick Tingoni is saying. I like all of that, and it's so disheartening to see what Richard Tice says, which is so disrespectful. And Nigel Farage isn't that much better. It's, oh, no, we can't be associated with that Tommy Robinson rabble, all the people who want to. But that's not the way to do it. Everyone should be brought into the camp, surely. Or maybe they don't want us all in the camp. I mean, maybe, just Marcus, one point, maybe Reform are just taking the view, listen, at the end of the day, come the election, you'll have a choice. You can either vote for us with a realistic chance of getting elected, or you can vote for UKIP and waste your vote. Maybe they're that. Is that cynical? I'm not sure.
Look, tactically speaking, a lot of people are going to do that. I would do that if it came down to it. I'll unashamedly say if I was living in Weaver, and Vale, I'd vote for Reform, because UKIP are not anywhere near achieving that amazing victory. Now, there are voices within Reform or without Reform. Ben Habib has maybe played this perfectly, the former deputy leader, and something you're friendly with and becoming friends with, and we're certainly in that.
Yeah.
Well,
Ben's
he straddled it perfectly. He straddled it. He said, look, there are things that are going on right now that involve Tommy Robinson, who I'm not associated with, but there are some things that I agree with. There are some things that I disagree with.
Yeah.
However, we don't need this disunity. But there seems to be almost like a class element to this. Am I getting this wrong? It's almost like, go away, you peasants.
Well, there's that kind of,
which is crazy.
But there is that Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, very paternal, old boys club, and they don't want anything to do with, like, when I stood in Trafalgar Square with the other 50,000 or whatever back in July, a lot of them it was a cross mixture, but there's a lot of them working class people. Well, where are we? And actually, a lot of them are ex-army as well. These are people that like what Tommy Robinson says, but they also like the principles of reform. And that's why Ben Habib is a very sensible voice. And I only wish that it was Ben that was the leader, actually, of reform, because if he were, I think we'd find ways to make accommodation. I mean, I was taught, back to Richard Tice, just for one final second. Yes, I was always taught, something, if you get nothing good to say about someone, just say nothing. Maybe that's a bit of simple old wisdom that Richard Tice could. There's no need to demonize all those. Never mind, you don't have to like Tommy Robinson. You can take great issue with Tommy Robinson, but there's, I would say, probably hundreds of thousands of people around this country who are well inclined towards him. So you don't disrespect them. And Richard Tice called them that lot. So I'm sorry, Richard Tice, you should resign.
Absolutely. And as it transpires before the election, Tommy Robinson's associates, I was watching Paul Thorpe's channel on YouTube. Yep. Paul seems to, I've never met Paul, but he seems to be like a really decent guy.
He is.
And his associates as well.
Yep.
They put on a fantastic event in London where I think for the 50,000 or 100,000, however many were there, a lot of them were stopped coming in. There was absolutely no trouble. There was no violence. We take our hats off to them. But he had said that before the election, they'd reached out to him and his associates and asked for their support. And they now regret actively backing reform after being slapped in the face by the comments that Nigel had made to Steve Edgington, saying he's not interested to talk about, doesn't want to talk about deportations. And then Farage's Tice's comments to Tomini that we've nothing to do with these people, we don't want them, we're not interested in that lot. It's not going to end well for the reform unless they can fix this.
But it was that lot that took to the streets to protest the killing of the young girls. Yes. It was that lot that I think have made a stand against the terrorism and whatnot that we've seen. So it's terrible that they're being betrayed by reform. I mean, I saw Lee Anderson talking the other day about something about, oh, are you all with me? Something like this. Yeah. And I was saying, well, presumably not, Lee, if you are a Tommy Robinson supporter. You know, I mean, I find reform's leadership very hard to understand. And, you know, they just may be very, very cynical. I've had some of that side of reform say to me, you know something, David, you know, you need to understand they're playing a game. They're boxing clever. You know, they don't want to seem
keeping their powder dry.
Yeah. And honestly, that's how the Uni Party operates. Yeah. So since, you know, we're implacably opposed to the Uni Party, my fear is that Tice and Farage will turn reform into the Uni Party, whereas a more sensible soul like Ben Habib and some others within reform, they understand it can be done. It can be done better. It can be more nuanced. It could be, there's ways to reach out. Sure. Marcus, there really are, and try and bring all the good people together, because that's what we need. Because in the final analysis, we started this show talking about, you know, the authoritarian thug that is Starmer and his regime. We need to bring that regime down democratically in 2029, if not before. That only can be achieved if we all come together. You know, honestly, it needs to be a big tent to bring them down, and you don't achieve that if you alienate other people just because you disagree with them in this, that, and the other. I think we should all try and come together.
Well, that's a fantastic way to end the show. And as we'll say, we're supporters of those within reform, but perhaps not reform leadership. We are in good contact with Nick Tenconi, and maybe he will benefit massively out of this. There will be some people that feel that passionately about the comments that have been made recently. There will be tactical voters, like I just declared. I'm not in reform, but certainly if I was a constituent in like Amesbury, Basher Amesbury, if I was in his constituency, I probably would vote tactically just to give Keir Starmer a bloody nose.
Yeah, but then he might punch you.
Well, that's it. Listen, I'm not a violent man, but I fancy my chances against Keir Starmer. I'm not. That's hypothetically. I'm not wishing any harm on him. I'm 6'4", 15 stone. I kind of think my chances might maybe be better with Sadiq Khan. I don't know.
Yeah, you'd have to, as long as you can reach down a long way.
Maybe nothing. Obviously, it would be non-competitive boxing. It would just all be political barbs. We're not violent men, as we said at the beginning.
No, we're not.
We're peaceful men. But look, in the last couple of minutes, is there anything that you'd like to share with our viewers and listeners about your upcoming event with Ben Habib in London?
Yeah, well, just to say that, you know, again, Marcus, this is the thing I've been trying so hard to try and make work. Putting together interesting discussions with and thoughtful discussions with people who have got something to say, and Ben's one of those guys. So at the end of January 30th, in London, we're going to have Ben Habib, we're going to have Baroness Hoey, Kate Hoey, who's a lovely lady, really excellent. I mean, ex-Labour, FYI, you know, so yes. She but from a more traditional style of Labour, and I've got a huge amount of respect for Kate. So yes, we have Kate Hoey, Ben Habib in London, end of January. Once you've got Christmas and New Year out of the way, and you've got the New Year blues, come along, and on the basis that we're not all in prison by then, of course, I should add that. And then we'll probably all be in Belmarsh, but hopefully Belmarsh won't be the venue. The venue will be available between now and then, and you'll be able to come along and see it. And I hope everyone who watches this will maybe put that in your diary, circle January 30th, London, come along and just be part of the discussion. Because what you're doing here, you know, Marcus, it's so important. It's having good conversations. And it's so healthy. The worst thing in the world is when you have to bottle up things. Get it out. Talk about it. I've got 1,000,001 questions for Ben and Kate, you know, and I'm sure the audience will as well. And that's I think the essence of what's healthy and good. So yeah, I hope people will do that.
Amen, brother David. Amen. And let's also, as a footnote, hope that we're celebrating a Donald
Oh,
Trump
yeah.
victory.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll finish on a real bit of news you don't know. I have got an invite on the basis that he wins. Obviously, if he doesn't win, it's all over. But if he wins, I have got an invite to be able to get into the White House. In particular regard, Donald Trump, I'm not sure about, but
Right.
his vice president does share something in common with me, as I'm sure you realize. J.D. Vance and yours truly are from the same gene pool, let's call it, and that. So I would be hopeful of being potentially in Washington in January, before the event in London in the end of January, if it all works out. So I'm 100%. But even if it wasn't, even if it meant not, if I couldn't get near it, I want Donald Trump in. It's a fight back against globalism starts with that man getting into the White House, Marcus, and I pray he gets in, because he's our final hope, politically speaking, I think, anyway, and we need to get him in. But it's looking good. Kamala's angry. I'm real happy about that, and yeah, I'm following it. As I'm sure you are. Night and day, and not long to go. As another thing, those of you who watch me, if you tune in the day after the U.S. election, which is the
6th of November.
Yeah, 6th of November. I've got Naomi Wolf coming on. And to talk about different things, but one of them will be the US election as well. And Naomi, former Democrat, former person who helped Hillary Clinton, was very involved in the Clinton campaign, and she's completely gone the other way. And she realizes, Trump is what we need. So let's hope he gets in, so I get to the White House.
Well, look, and we will need probably a new ambassador.
I'm at all points of. Well, can you imagine how it's going to be for Keir Starmer if Donald Trump gets in?
And David Lammy.
Yeah. Oh,
the
yeah.
Screams and the howls will be heard from the banshee.
Oh, the salty tears will flow. I hope it happens. I remember 2016 so well. 2020, we know they cheated, but 2024, as much as we can be, Marcus, I think God's on our side, and I think that Donald Trump getting back in is all part of that. Because this is the moment. Yeah. And I know they're going to try and cheat. I know that.
But they tried to kill him twice.
They tried to kill the man, but the fact that he survived, that somebody's looking after him, right? He's being taken care of, and I'm hoping that will become manifest, in a very short period of time. So So Donald Trump in the White House, and that gets 2025 off to a starter, because, as you say, the lefties will all be crying. The BBC will have black armbands and solemn music. All the usual stuff. The Guardian will probably have emotional breakdown. It'll be wonderful to behold, and I'm sure, Marcus, you'll be there to talk about it, and hopefully so will I.
Amen. And we hope to God willing, get you on at Christmas time.
So
we always do a wee Christmas thing. We normally, the time goes so quickly, and it's normally a 2 or 3 months that we have you on, David. But you're one of the most loved and treasured guests that we have on the show. Your work is amazing, and we can't wait to see you back round about the Christmas time. But all that remains for me to say is, Mr. David Vance, thank you very much for coming on to Herd Immunity News.
Thank you very much.